Right, this is the music I've elected to use for rookie season. Now, rookie season is a section we do occasionally where we just basically talk to people who are, you know, relatively new to basketball but have an interest in it, and just basically give you guys some tips to the rooks. Now, this week, I wanted to bring something up particularly because someone asked me a question. They asked me straight up, how is the best way to follow the NBA? And at first I was like, what are you talking about? And then I was like, you know, actually, it's a good question because there are so many games for a start. So even if you were in the US, it must be incredibly difficult to truly follow, you know, with 6 or 7 games a day. Secondly, of course, there's a time lag. So we're out of the loop over here. So it's somewhat difficult to follow, but not impossible and definitely worthwhile. So I asked the boys to each bring one bit of advice as to how one should follow the NBA. Who would like to go first, gentlemen?
I'll go first.
There you are. Ollie's in the building.
Okay. I'll talk about it sort of like on a personal experience when I started watching basketball. First of all, I would just, the game interested me, so I'd watch the game, and obviously I didn't have a clue what was going on. It was just fun to watch. But then after I started watching a few more games, I started to get interested in the players, the storylines, and just learning a bit more about it. So, you know, one thing I always just use for the knowledge is YouTube. And I would always watch, I'll listen to, a lot of the times I'll listen to like the talk shows, the more mainstream mainstream talk shows, because generally they would talk about basketball, but not in a way that kind of like how we talk about, like analytically, statistically. So it was quite straightforward. So you had your Skip and Shannon's, your Max and your Max Kellerman, Stephen A's, Jalen and Jacoby, Colin Cowherd, that sort of thing. You know, I thought it was quite easy for me to understand what they were talking about.
With you. Yep.
And so that's generally how I started, and then from there I moved on to more guys who would go a bit more dive deeper. So your Bill Simmons, Ryan Russello's, Kevin O'Connor's, that sort of thing, and that's just how I kind of built up from there. Yeah,
love that. Totally agree. So Ollie's basically saying hook onto the media via YouTube, hook onto the basketball media via YouTube. That is one thing I will say. Americans are really good at marketing their sports, and part of that is creating storylines and being really, really engaging. So what you'll find on YouTube is shows such as First Take or Undisputed or First Things First or Jalen and Jacoby. Those are probably the 4 that I kind of watched on YouTube initially. And they literally show every day. And they break down basketball, not only the individual games, but the league, the dynamics of the league, the dynamics of the players in a way that's really easy to follow and understand. And if you follow that for a week, you'll find yourself all of a sudden having opinions you didn't even know you had. And it's all because they're really good at just impressing the game on you. And I guarantee you, if you do that, just follow a couple of those shows on YouTube daily, by a couple of weeks, you'll be hooked. Really, really good. Ollie, totally with you there. YouTube is your friend. Follow the media, follow the shows. I'm going to bring this to Tobes next. And then K. Dot. What do you reckon? What's your advice for the rooks out there?
So obviously there's a lot going on every night. 2 simple ways, like the way we consume a lot of content these days. Get yourself on apps. So the NBA app is a great way to just feel yourself around the game. They've got really good layout and UI design behind their app. I think it's really easy and accessible to use.
It's a brilliant app, actually. It's
really, really good. You've got everything you need there, from standings and statistics to headlines. If you just want to see what happened day by day, they will literally give you like top 10 headlines. They've got a series of contents and articles you can follow the journey on, written by their army of writers, and they do a really good job of maintaining that. And you can also digest the highlights in really short chunks, 2-minute videos if you just want to keep it short and sweet. So that's a great one-stop shop if you do want to just find everything. Yeah, placed in the NBA.com app. Additionally, speaking of apps, I'm a big fan of Bleacher Report. So they do a lot of apps in general, but then also do a good job of getting that content to you. And if we're going back to personal stories, the last one was just not to show us up, but yeah, like similar to media and for listening to people, I listen to other pods as well. One of them being the No Dunks podcast, previously known as the Starters. I've been listening to them for years, and I found them so entertaining. When I first heard about them, I actually went back. The same way I hope you guys listening to us bond with us and find us funny. I found those guys so funny and hilarious. I actually went back and listened to like old copies of their shows, and I was learning about Derrick Rose MVP season at their time, chronologically speaking. I was like, so I really bonded and attached with them. So hopefully, if you're new to the sport, you can ride with us. We can bring you along in that sense, and you can have that same experience. But the app as well. So, they're the two main things I really cotton on to. Yeah,
Tobes, 100% with that. Get the NBA.com app. It's just like, it's got everything on it. So like, it's self-explanatory, but just get it, and then just every day, just open it up in the morning. There's just so much content on there. Highlights, news will get you involved. Totally agree with that. We'll not formally endorse a fellow podcast, but I do accept, just get involved in the community that is basketball coverage. It's just so interesting. I think because there's just so many games, so much going on, that there's just a lot of content, a lot of things you can just engross yourself in. So do recommend that. K-Dot, what you got?
So I think fundamentally the NBA is built on their superstars. So I think it's about literally finding a superstar that you have an affinity towards, whether that be a LeBron James or a Steph Curry, and just follow their journey. Literally, like just everything that they do, like have a look at it, even if it's just simple. Like looking at their particular their highlights, for instance. I remember
100%
away back when Ollie fell in love with Blake Griffin, literally just watching his highlights all the time and just being wowed by his athleticism. And I think then that leads on to, if you follow one superstar, I think that leads on to, okay, what the storylines are around that particular superstar. So whether that be, these talk shows that we've mentioned, they speak about those particular superstars, and then that sort of leads you on to, okay, are they better than, like, say for instance your person Steph Curry, they'll be like, okay, is he better 3-point shooter than, say, Dame Lillard, for instance? And you're thinking, who's Dame Lillard? And then actually that it kind of grows with you. And I also think that if you are going to pick Steph Curry, and if they do reach the playoffs, it'll probably tell you the difference between the regular season and the postseason, and how they do, and how they sort of try and find ways to overcome their barriers. So I think, just follow a superstar that you feel, or follow a team that you feel like you have an affinity towards, and I think that could carry you there.
Totally agree. That's how I got into it. I remember I think we did another section about it, and that's what I said, like LeBron James, I just followed him. And then as K-Dot said, like, when you start following a superstar, you then start following the superstar's rivals and the superstar's teammates. And before you know it, you know a lot about the game. So yeah, just pick a superstar. Don't be afraid to be that fan who's like a noob, who's like, oh, I really like LeBron James, or I really like Steph Curry, because they're great players. So just enjoy it. Just follow a superstar, enjoy it. So at this point, you've got a team. You just pick the team. You picked a superstar. You've downloaded the NBA app, and you're following the goings on YouTube on a daily or a few times a weekly basis. Okay. Trust me, you'll find yourself an expert in no time. So I'm going to build on that, and I'm going to say another way to get into the basketball is to become what I call a box scoreologist. Now, the box score is basically the statistics from each game. every sport has statistics, but for some reason in basketball, statistics are a really, really big thing. And I think the reason for that is, number one, there's a lot of possessions, which means there's a lot of incidents within the game. That's what statisticians would say. There's literally a lot more physical incidents within the game. So there's a lot of stats that are generated from that. And number two, because there's so many games, I don't care who you are, you can't follow them all. So a lot of people tend to look at the statistics and try and build a picture of what happened in each game via the stats. So if the experts do that, you can do that too. So what I would suggest is get very comfortable with the box score. Yeah, you can do that via multiple websites or just the NBA.com app. Look at the scores and then click in. See what the shooting percentage is, the points, the rebounds, blocks, the assists. Look at your favorite players, K-Dot suggested. See their shooting percentage. See how many threes they've got, their points, their rebounds, their assists, their averages. If they've had a good night, a bad night. And then before you know it, you'll start understanding some of the finer points in the game purely based off stats. And that's an interesting approach, I think. And I think it really complements everything everyone else has said. I think as well, listen, end of the day, we're all we like to feel like experts in things. And I think if you get really familiar with the box score and then start to enjoy some advanced stats, you can feel like an expert and you can talk with authority on certain things despite not seeing the game. Because I think anyone who follows basketball appreciates it's difficult to watch all the games. Yeah. So that would be my advice to add. Enjoy the box score, get to understand it, understand the stats, understand what's good, what's bad, what's interesting, what's an anomaly, and then use it with all the stuff the other boys have said. And then before you know it, you're big on basketball all of a sudden. You're quite big on the ball. So that's one thing I'd advise. I have a couple of things to mention. Enjoy the highlights. The highlights are great. If you are going to start watching basketball, try and follow on Sundays. We have Clubhouse on Sundays where you can just watch along with us. And, if you think, you don't have time to watch all the game, I would start by watching the fourth quarters. Now, there's something magical about the fourth quarter of a basketball game. You just don't know what's going to happen. So if you can't watch the whole thing, watch the third and fourth quarters, particularly the fourth quarter. And as the tension builds up, you'll find yourself just supporting a player or a team just out of the blue. Only other thing I'd add to that is follow the playoffs. Playoffs are awesome. In the UK, we don't really have that in our sports, yeah. But playoffs are just sick. They're another level. Trust me, when the playoffs come, we'll have a lot of content for you. But follow the playoffs.